boy walks into a luxury skyscraper alone, clutching a letter that could destroy the life of a millionaire he's never met, or awaken the truth he's been running from for over a decade. What's inside that envelope? And why does this child look so familiar to a man who claims he has no family? Stay with us, because this story will challenge everything you believe about second chances. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and like the video. Your support keeps these powerful stories coming. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Now let's jump into the story. It started like any other morning at the Kingswell Hotel. Sharp suits, shining floors, coffee cups that cost more than most lunches. 40 stories up, behind tall glass windows, the most important business meeting of the year was in full swing. Davin Locke stood at the head of a long, polished table. He didn't smile much, but people listened when he spoke. He was the kind of man who made million-dollar decisions before breakfast and didn't bother looking back. "We push the merger through by Friday," he said, tapping the screen behind him. Then we beep. The intercom buzzed, cutting him off. "Mr. Locke," came a voice from security. "Sorry to interrupt. There's single quotes a boy downstairs says he needs to speak with you. He has a letter." "A boy?" The room fell silent. Phones stopped. Coffee mugs paused mid-sip. Davin didn't move. "What kind of letter?" he asked, keeping his voice flat. He said, "You need to read it, sir." "Something about your son." That word, son. Davin blinked. He hadn't heard that word in years. Not in reference to himself. Not in any serious way. A flicker of confusion crossed his face before he turned sharply back to the room. "Take 10, he said, and walked out without another word. Downstairs, in the grand marble lobby, a small boy stood near the security desk. He looked out of place among the polished shoes and glass elevators. His clothes were clean, but worn at the edges. A second-hand backpack sat at his feet. Around his neck hung a delicate silver chain with a small oval locket. He couldn't have been more than 10 or 11. Davin approached slowly, unsure why his heart was beating faster than it did before major board meetings. The boy looked up. Serious brown eyes met Davin's, steady, not afraid. "Mr. Locke?" the boy asked. "That's me," Davin said, still trying to place the face, the voice, the reason. "My name is Micah," the boy said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a white envelope. "My mom asked me to give this to you," she said. "It's time." Davin took the envelope, but didn't open it. Instead, he looked at the boy. Really looked at him. The shape of his chin. The way he stood straight. Too still for a child. The locket. There was something about him that felt familiar. "Where's your mom?" Davin asked. "At work," Micah replied. "She works cleaning rooms at the Lakeside Inn. She used to be a nurse. She said to tell you that. And she said you'd understand." Davin had no idea what to say to that. Nurse? Lakeside Inn? He opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. Neat, careful script. 3 sentences in, the blood rushed from his face. "You don't know this," the letter began, "but Micah is your son." Davin didn't speak. Not right away. He read the letter once, then again. It was quiet in the lobby. All the noise of the world had faded behind a curtain of disbelief. How old are you?" Davin asked softly. "I just turned 11, Micah said. "Last month, 11. Davin tried to do the math, the dates, the people, the possibilities. His brain scrambled for logic, for order, but nothing about this was business. This was something else entirely. "Do you want to come upstairs?" he asked. Finally, "I think we should talk." Micah hesitated. He looked up at the glass elevator, and then back at Davin. He nodded slowly. As the elevator rose, Davin stared at the boy beside him. Micah didn't fidget, didn't speak, just stood there quietly, his small fingers touching the silver locket at his chest. "What's in the locket?" Davin asked. "Pictures," Micah said, "of my mom and my great-grandma. It belonged to her. She said the women in our family always wore it when they had something hard to face." Davin swallowed hard. Somehow, this boy standing beside him was changing everything. As the elevator doors opened, Davin realized his life would never be the same again. And this was only the beginning. Before the sun rises, Nora Silva is already awake. The old kettle on the stove rattles softly as it boils water. Steam curls through the tiny kitchen of her one-bedroom apartment. She moves with quiet grace, her slippers making the faintest sound on the cracked linoleum floor. She prepares 2 slices of toast and gently spreads peanut butter on them. She cuts an apple with care, tucking the slices into a small lunch container. Every piece has a place. Nothing is wasted. On the table sits Micah's backpack, neatly zipped and ready for school. A bus pass pokes out from the front pocket. Beside it, a folded raincoat that's seen better days. Nora had repaired the torn sleeve just last night. Sewing by hand after her shift ended, her fingers move with the steadiness of someone who's done this hundreds of times. She pauses, briefly, and touches the chain around her neck. The silver locket is warm against her skin. Inside it are 2 tiny photographs. One of her grandmother, smiling despite the hard years, and one of Micah as a baby, swaddled in a yellow blanket. "You always said we were stronger than we felt," she whispers to the locket, just loud enough for herself to hear. The apartment is old but full of life. Every corner holds a story. The fridge is covered in magnet-held photos and drawings from Micah's early school days. One corner has his first science fair ribbon. Nearby, her expired nursing license is tucked behind a calendar. She used to be a nurse, a good one. She was proud of that title. The day she received her license, she called her grandmother first. But life had shifted, quietly and quickly. When Micah came into the world, everything changed. As she pours tea into a chipped mug, the old radio on the counter hums to life. An old song plays, something her grandmother used to hum while folding laundry. Nora closes her eyes for just a second, letting the memory wash over her. Those days felt so far away now. Her job at the Lakeside Inn starts in 2 hours. She'll clean 12 rooms today, maybe more if the afternoon staff calls out. She'll scrub tubs, change linens, and vacuum hallways without anyone ever really seeing her. But it's honest work. And it pays the bills. She's learned to stretch each paycheck like a rubber band, tight but not broken. Some nights, dinner is canned soup and half a grilled cheese. But Micah never complains. He's growing fast. 11 already. Tall and thoughtful, with the same deep eyes as Nora stops herself. She doesn't say his name anymore. Hasn't in years. When the clock ticks to 6:15, she walks to Micah's bedroom door and knocks gently. "Time to get up, baby," she says softly. Inside, Micah stirs. He's always been an easy kid. Gets himself ready, brushes his teeth, packs his bag. She still checks his lunch every morning, just in case he forgets something. They sit across from each other at the small kitchen table. Micah eats his toast slowly, flipping through his science notes. Double quotes, "Mrs. Haley said I might be chosen for the field trip to the City Science Museum," he says between bites. "They only pick a few kids." "You're going to get it," Nora smiles. "You always work hard." He shrugs, like it's no big deal. But she sees the hope in his eyes. She always sees it. Do the other kids' parents get to go too? He asks carefully, like he's unsure how to ask what he really wants. "Some do," she replies. "Some don't." He nods, just wondering. Nora looks away for a moment, hiding the way her heart twists. She knows what he's really asking. And later, after he's left for school and the silence returns, she finally allows herself to cry. She opens the drawer by her bed. Inside is a letter. Old, yellowing at the edges, never sent. It's addressed to a man named Davin Locke. The words inside were written 11 years ago, on a night when Micah's tiny cries filled the apartment. Nora never mailed it. She didn't want to interrupt his life. She thought she was doing the right thing by staying silent. But now, Micah was asking questions. Quiet ones. Careful ones. And she was running out of ways to explain. She takes out a fresh sheet of paper and begins writing. Slowly, steadily. Every word chosen with care. When the letter is done, she folds it neatly and tucks it into a clean white envelope. Then, with trembling hands, she removes the locket from around her neck and places it gently on the table. She looks at it for a long time. Later that afternoon, when Micah returns home from school, she places both the letter and the locket into his small hands. "I need you to deliver something," she says. "And I need you to be brave." He looks up at her, unsure but curious. "Who's it for?" he asks. "Someone who deserves to know the truth," she replies. And in that quiet moment, a chapter begins to close, and another begins to open. The glass elevator hummed quietly as it climbed to the top floor. Micah stood with his hands tucked into his pockets, the letter deep inside his coat. Around his neck, a silver locket sat like a quiet weight, reminding him of his mother's words that morning. "Be brave," she'd whispered, kissing the top of his head. "You come from strong people." The lobby had felt cold and too big. The elevator even more so. Everything here was shiny, tall, and serious. He'd never been in a place like this before. When the elevator dinged, Micah stepped out onto a carpet so thick it felt like grass beneath his shoes. A tall woman in a headset greeted him with wide eyes. "You must be Micah," she said gently. "Mr. Locke is waiting." Micah nodded. He followed her down a long hallway lined with glass offices and expensive-looking art. She stopped in front of a dark wooden door and gave it 2 soft knocks. "Come in," came the voice from inside. Micah stepped in. The office was huge, with tall windows that looked over the city. The buildings outside sparkled in the sunlight. Davin Locke stood near the window, his suit perfectly pressed, a tablet in one hand. But when he turned and saw Micah, everything changed. The boy looked smaller here, like a misplaced piece in a polished room. But he also looked steady. The same eyes, the same quiet posture. Davin swallowed hard. "Have a seat," he said, gesturing toward the leather chair across from his desk. Micah sat, his back straight. His feet didn't reach the floor. Davin lowered himself into his chair, still staring. He wasn't sure what to say. This wasn't a meeting he could prepare for. There were no charts, no contracts. Just a boy who had appeared at his door with a letter that had cracked open something he hadn't realized was closed. "Your mother? She wrote this?" Davin asked, holding the letter. Micah nodded. "She said it was time you knew." Davin looked down at the paper again. He had read it 3 times already. Each time it hit harder. "Micah is your son." Those words felt like thunder in his chest. He had remembered Nora. Of course he had. The quiet nurse with the soft voice and strong hands. He had always noticed her, even if he hadn't said it out loud. Back then, life had been speeding forward. His career had been everything. And now, sitting across from this boy, he wondered how many moments he had missed without even knowing. "How much do you know?" "About me?" Davin asked. "Not a lot," Micah answered. "But Mom said you worked hard, that you were always good with people, and that you didn't know about me." Davin nodded slowly. "She's right. I didn't know." Micah pulled gently at the locket around his neck. "This was my great-grandma's," She said it helps when you're doing something scary. Gavin gave a small smile. It was the first real smile he'd shown all day. You're very brave, he said. I'm not sure I would have done this. When I was your age, Micah shrugged. Mom says courage doesn't mean you're not scared. It just means you do it anyway. There was silence in the room after that. Not awkward. Just heavy with everything unspoken. Do you have other kids? Micah asked after a moment. Gavin shook his head. No, just you, it turns out. Micah's eyes flicked to the bookshelves behind Gavin's desk. Trophies, awards, framed magazine covers. All of it neat and impressive, but not a single photo of a person. No family. No warmth. It's okay if you don't know what to do, Micah said quietly. I don't really know either. Gavin leaned back in his chair. His throat felt tight. This boy, this quiet, thoughtful boy, was more composed than most adults he knew. Do you? Do you want to spend some time together? Gavin asked. I'd like to get to know you. If that's something you're open to. Micah looked down at his hands, then up again. I think that would be okay. For the first time in years, Gavin felt unsure of his next move. But it also felt right. Real. More real than any meeting. Or deal he'd closed lately. Can I call your mom? He asked. Micah nodded. I have her number written down. 20 minutes later, as the two of them walked side by side back to the lobby, Gavin noticed something strange. His phone hadn't buzzed once. His calendar was probably screaming. But he didn't care. He held the elevator door open for Micah, who smiled a little and stepped in. This wasn't a business trip. This was the beginning of something. Completely new. A door had opened out, and neither of them knew what waited on the other side. The school auditorium buzzed with energy. Chairs squeaked, papers rustled, and proud parents whispered to one another as they scanned the printed programs. Academic Achievement Celebration was written in bold letters on the front cover. Nora Silva sat in the third row, wearing her cleanest blouse and a skirt she hadn't worn in years. Beside her, Mrs. Delaney, their kind elderly neighbor, held a small bouquet of flowers wrapped in grocery store paper. He's going to be wonderful, Mrs. Delaney whispered with a proud smile. That boy of yours is something special. Nora nodded, but her hands gripped the program a little too tightly. Her eyes scanned the back of the room for any sign of Gavin. He had said he might come, but might wasn't a promise. And Nora had learned not to hope too loudly. On stage, the principal adjusted the microphone and began reading names. One by one, students stepped forward to receive their certificates, their families clapping as their names echoed through the hall. And, for outstanding achievement in science, the principal said, pausing just slightly, Micah Silva. Micah stood and made his way to the stage. His walk was steady, but Nora could tell he was nervous. He glanced once into the crowd, searching and then his face changed. His eyes landed on the back row. Gavin stood there, slightly out of breath. Tie loosened, hair ruffled, as though he had run to make it on time. He gave a small wave. Micah didn't smile right away, but his shoulders lifted, just slightly. The kind of shift only a mother would notice. When he accepted his award and took the microphone to say a few words about his project, his voice was clear and confident. I worked on water recycling at home, he said, because Mom says we don't waste what we can reuse. That includes hope and second chances. Nora's eyes burned with tears. She wasn't alone. Even the principal wiped at her glasses. After the ceremony, the small crowd spilled into the hall. Children showed off certificates. Parents hugged their kids. Teachers smiled and posed for photos. Gavin approached slowly. He didn't want to push. He wasn't sure where he stood in all of this, but Micah walked right to him. You made it, the boy said quietly. I wouldn't have missed it, Gavin replied, his voice thick. You were amazing. Micah looked up at him. Thanks for coming, Dad. It was the first time he'd said the word out loud, and it didn't feel strange, it felt right. Later that week, Davin sat in his office, but his mind wasn't on mergers or deals. His calendar buzzed with reminders, but he ignored them. Instead, he pulled out a small silver frame from his bag. Inside, it was a copy of Micah's Science Award certificate. Underneath the glass, he placed a second sheeted copy of Nora's original letter. Both now sat on his desk, next to his awards and business magazines. When his assistant walked in, she noticed right away. New edition? She asked with a smile. Yeah, Davin said. Finally added something that matters. On Sunday evening, the tiny apartment smelled like roasted chicken and cinnamon. The table, usually set for two, had a third plate now. Nora moved around the kitchen, trying to stay busy. She wasn't sure how this would go. Sharing space was one thing. Sharing a life was another. Micah set the table, humming a tune he learned from Mrs. Delaney, the silver locket around. His neck gleamed in the warm light. A soft knock at the door made Nora freeze. I'll get it, Micah said quickly. When he opened the door, Davin stood there, holding a small orchid in one hand and a casserole dish in the other. I brought dessert, he said awkwardly. Micah grinned. Mom says anything with cinnamon is welcome. Nora stepped into the doorway. Her eyes met Davin's. For a moment, the room held its breath. You're here, she said quietly. If it's all right, Davin replied. I'd like to keep showing up. Nora didn't smile. Not right away. But her shoulders eased, and her eyes softened. Come in, she said. They sat down together. Not as a perfect family, but as people who had made mistakes, who had lived different lives, but who had chosen now to show up. To sit at the same table. To make room for something new. Micah passed the bread basket, then reached across the table for both his parents' hands. We're figuring it out, he said. And in that moment, it didn't matter where they had started, only that they were here. Together. Just names on paper, but something real. Something beginning.